Hi, fourth graders. Here we are, lesson 5 of unit 1. And today we're going to be talking about comparing large numbers, and then also we're going to begin working on rounding. So first of all, you have a lot of different numbers here that you're comparing, and I do want you to go through at least a couple of these problems to make sure you understand what to do. The strategy that I would like you to see you use, and whenever I ask to see your work, this will be what I want to see, is I want to see you line up the numbers on top of each other, making sure that you have the place value lined up as well. By that I mean that the ones place is above the ones place, tens, hundreds, etc. So if we're looking at these two numbers, remember that the first thing we always want to look at is the greatest value, because if that one is different, then we know right away which number is greater. So we always start on the left. And I see that there's a 1 in the 10,000s place in both numbers. So I move to the thousands place, and right away I can see that the 2 is greater than the 1 in the thousands place. So because of that, I know that 12,563 is greater than 11,987. For some of you, this might seem, like, oh yeah, of course it is. But I want you to be careful as you go through these, because they do try to trick you. That's the whole point, is that you're paying very close attention to place value. So, for example, some of the numbers are very similar. So be careful as you're working through these. Okay, now we get to some rounding. And the rounding, in my opinion, is the trickiest thing in this unit for fourth grade. So this says round to the nearest 10,000. So there's only going to be one correct answer to these, and it has to be rounded to the correct place value. So looking at the number, I see that there is a 2 in the 10,000s place. So I'm going to underline that. And then after I underline it, remember that I look to the right, and I can draw an arrow to show me, look to the right, and then that number that I'm pointing at, that number is the boss. So the 5 is the boss of the 2. The 5 is either going to tell the 2 to go up or stay the same. So remember that if this number here, if the boss is 5 or more, it's going to tell the 2 to soar, right? 4 or less, let it rest. So since it's a 5, it is going to tell the 2 to go up, to soar. The 2 will change to a 3. And then every other number that's after the 2, that just changed to a 3, turns to a 0. So you need to count how many digits you have there. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then remembering to put your comma in the correct position there. Okay, so that's rounding to the greatest value, that is that number. The ones down here are that way as well, round to the nearest 100,000. Well, these numbers all go to the 100,000, right? So underlining the 100,000, the 3 becomes the boss. 3 is going to tell 5 to go up or stay the same. Well, 3 is 4 or less, so it's going to tell the 5 to rest or to stay the same. So 5 stays the same, and then I count how many numbers are after that 5. There are 5 numbers, so I'm putting in 5 zeros, and then I put in my comma. So in my opinion, when you're rounding to the greatest place value, it's a little bit easier because you're always just going to the largest number. But we do need to be careful, because we're going to see numbers where they ask us to round to different place values. So let's check out number 25. It says, write a number that changes to 310,000 when it is rounded. To what place was your number rounded? So this is interesting, because I have to come up with a number that if I rounded it, I would get this as an answer. So here's an example. What if I had this number? So 311,523. So if I'm rounding that, now look, they don't even tell me what place, so I have to answer that. I have to say what place. So that's kind of nice, because at least I have control. I'm going to round it to the nearest 10,000. So looking to the right, there's the boss. This one tells that one to stay the same. And then remember that everything in front of the underlined digit stays the same as well. Now everything after the underlined digit changes to a 0. So you count how many numbers are after that digit. There are 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that the boss is always part of that count because you're counting everything after the underlined digit. So check it out. I actually did round this number to this number, and I was rounding to the nearest 10 thousands place. And if you're wondering, do I actually have to write that? Yes, definitely. You need to practice spelling your places and understanding what they're called. So maybe do 1 or 2 more of these to really make sure you understand what you're doing. These take a little bit more thought, and it's kind of a puzzle. It's kind of, you have to figure out what strategy you're going to use to come up with the correct number rounded. All right, now these, you will see these on quizzes, and I think there's one on the final test for this unit as well. What is this big number rounded to, and then you have to round it to all these different places. So what I do for this is I go ahead and write it out a little bit bigger down here, so I've got it ready to go. Now, round it to the nearest tens place. I'm going to underline the digit in the tens place and draw my arrow. 1 is the boss. 1 tells 0 to go up or stay the same. Well, 1 is 4 or less, so it's going to tell 0 to rest or stay the same. So I'll go up here and I'll write just my 0. Notice that I'm writing it over to the side because I know that's the tens place. So I want to make sure I leave space for all the other places that will go in front of it. So if 0 stays the same, everything after it changes to a 0. There's only one number after it this time. And then everything in front of the 0, all of those numbers, remember, stay the same. So I'm going to have a 3, 9, 5, 1. Let's see if I got that right. Yep. And then a comma there. But do you think that just because rounding to the nearest 10 got us this number, do you think that we're going to have the same number rounding to the nearest 100? We actually might, but as you go through these, sometimes it will change. It definitely will change at least once or twice. So remembering that if you're rounding something to the nearest 10, you have 1 0, possibly 2 zeros. There's a good example of that. Hundreds place, you're going to have 2 zeros at least. Thousands place, at least 3 zeros at the end. So each time you're rounding to a greatest place, you're ending up with more zeros because this underline happens further and further over this direction. Okay, so then what I would do to now do part B is I would erase, if you have a whiteboard, that's even better here, isn't it? I would erase the markings that I made and I would start over again, this time underlining the digit in the hundreds place and drawing my arrow to the tens place. All right, guys, that is lesson 5. Let me know if you have any questions.